the end of the day, they should have never allowed any of these communities to enter municipal bankruptcy. I mean, when you look at the size of Pennsylvania's state budget and you look at the amount of resources that these communities have, you know, to me, that creates a negative label and I mean, it just should have never gotten that point. I mean, these communities, whether it's Johnstown or my community of Braddock, have made substantial contributions to the welfare of the Commonwealth, and to receive this kind of label, I think, is almost in some cases more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that there could have been better ways to have addressed that. Economically, development speaking, we've been successful in attracting some businesses in the town, and we've been successful in reducing the amount of crime and what have you. But at the end of the day, from our town, it really comes down to resources. You know, the number of, the policies and the tax incentives. I mean, those I think really come down to, is building your community back up a priority, or is it just lip service and we use your town or community and its residents as a prop, where we show up every 2 or 4 years, have our picture taken, and promise good things, and then we never follow through on it. So my role, as I would see it, is that I don't know what Johnstown needs specifically, but if I'm elected United States Senator, I'm going to visit enough times to find out what that exactly is that Johnstown wants and what Johnstown needs. I think it would be arrogant on my part, or any candidate's part, to come in here and sit in this chair and say, I know Johnstown needs blank, or I need the blank. It's really listening and talking to the leadership and the people here, and to see what and how we're able to facilitate and make that happen. To me, it's really just about getting the word out and being responsive and being open to trying new solutions, and making these, rehabbing these beautiful spaces downtown, and just like a general casting call for entrepreneurs, or for people that want to reimagine and re-envision and see a lot of possibility in a downtown Johnstown where others wouldn't see that kind of opportunity. And
how do you fight?
Our path to win this race, and I think we have a strong one, is we energize and hook up with the Bernie coalition of people. I believe that Bernie's going to be very competitive here in Pennsylvania. I think he actually can win Pennsylvania. In the 2 rallies that Bernie's had in Pennsylvania, I've been to both of them, and I've never seen that kind of energy and that kind of crowds and that kind of excitement. And our model allows for a 60%, if we get 60% of Bernie voters, and then when you factor in going up strong out west, we're the only candidate in the western part of Pennsylvania, our core constituencies. So I don't think anyone's going to run away with this race, but our path is energizing those folks, and we've been able to do that and work very closely with them to kind of get plugged into that network. Well, I mean, the national campaign is going to have a huge impact for us, because we've like, for example, we went to the Philadelphia rally and spent 4.5 hours shaking hands, and everyone in those lines knew who we were, and the ones that didn't were excited when they found out. They're like, oh yeah, and you got my vote and everything. So we're plugging into that kind of core constituency that we're the only candidate that's endorsed Sanders in this race, and our positions line up very closely with most of the Sanders positions. It's impossible to understate how much our path is tied to Sanders' success in Pennsylvania. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't the case. And we have several strategies that we're implementing and will implement that will get the word out, where it's like, hey, we're the candidate that's endorsed Bernie Sanders. We're the candidate that agrees. In other words, if you want him for president, this is your closest match, for the United States Senate. In terms of the heroin problem, and the opioid, I think we need to legalize marijuana. I think a lot of people went down that path through their pain, and they ended up on pain pills prescribed by doctors who were well-intentioned, but it's a documented fact, unfortunately, that 100 million people suffer from chronic pain. The pharmaceutical industry responded to that by creating these pills, and doctors, I think, have prescribed one bottle of pills enough for every man, woman, and child in America. I mean, it's just a staggering amount of prescriptions have been issued. And in terms of like a solution for that, they're talking medical marijuana. I don't think that's comprehensive enough. I just think it should just be, for the opioid problem, just legalize marijuana and make it accessible, make it taxable, make it regulated, and use that revenue either to support public education in Pennsylvania or to help with drug addiction and drug counseling services. The question my campaign poses is, what if we started, we declared a war on addiction as opposed to a war on drugs, and completely looked at it in a different way and treated it like a medical problem that should require empathy instead of incarceration. I think it just, the good news is that I think if we reevaluate, we can see what the next 30 years look like, but we have to stop locking people up for it, and we have to treat it like the medical issue that I believe it is, instead of the criminal issue that so many people have treated. And my perspective on free trade has been that it's never been fair trade, and I think it's disingenuous. At least just say we are going to sacrifice one segment of our economy to grow others, and just be honest about it instead of trying to sell it as a good deal for everybody. Much the way they sold NAFTA. I tell this joke where it's like, I never thought I'd live to see the day where I would actually say this phrase, but Ross Perot was right. NAFTA it was a devastating, big sucking noise or whatever that phrase was from jobs. And I know that from my hometown in York. We lost Caterpillar shortly thereafter. And, my town, if the Chinese have already tried it, hacking and espionage for the Edgar Thomson plant, which is the steel mill in my town. And it's the last steel mill in Pittsburgh. That's it. It would be like going to San Francisco in 100 years and saying, hi, this is our last software company in the area. It's just something that's defined it, but it's true. Half the world's steel came from, the area. So, and I know if that plant goes out of business and goes under, I literally will have to say, do we want police today or do we want crossing guards? But we can't have both. So it's, there are really high consequences there. So in terms of the other campaigns, I would just kind of flip that on its head, where it's like, Mr. Sestak has an advantage without a doubt because he's been campaigning for 7 years straight, clearly. And but I think he's too fixated on his military experience. His resume, I think it's thin on a lot of different things as well too. So in terms of executive experience, in terms of like day-to-day working in a community that has the same kind of issues that you guys have outside your windows, and just a general understanding of the way things work on the ground, and not 7-figure lobbying jobs and things of that nature. I just feel like it's a better fit, and we don't have that kind of representation in the Senate. Mike Doyle, our congressman's been in office for 22 years, and towns like mine, have continually struggled. Towns like McKeesport. I just feel like there just needs to be someone that's more in tune with the needs of this whole giant roster of communities across Pennsylvania whose better days of our generation ago. Who's happy with the way things have gone in the Middle East? And not one person has ever raised their hand, ever. And it was pretty telling that during the Republican debate, even the brother of the president that started that war in Iraq refused to say that it was anything but a mistake, basically. Nobody owns it. Nobody wants to own it. And that's a really big mulligan when you think about it. The thousands of service lives lost, the trillions of dollars. And I think anyone that would have voted for that, to me, that's a serious strike against that person, because that was a catastrophic misjudgment. There's no crisis in public education if you live in the right zip code, but if you live in the wrong zip code, your school districts might be incredibly challenged. I know, our school district's very challenged. I know in Allegheny County, it's a tale of two cities. You have some of the best school districts in the entire state, and then you have some of the most challenged school districts in the entire state, all within one county. And I think the federal government's role, I mean, the funding formula is badly skewed, and it relies too much on property taxes. And when half your tax base picks up and leaves, you're expected to educate and support that infrastructure, and it just doesn't work that way. And they're unable to. But if you live in an affluent or prosperous community, like Mount Lebanon, for say, if you've ever heard of Mount Lebanon, I mean, they are consistently ranked the best school district in the state, and good for them, as it should be. So I think the federal role needs to. I've heard different figures, but there's probably a $3 to $4 billion gap in what we're currently spending on public education in this state versus what we should be spending on public education. And to make up that difference would require a commitment and an investment in those resources. But no one's suggesting that Wilkinsburg or Woodland Hills is going to be on parity with Mount Lebanon, but I'm simply suggesting that the difference should not be as stark and dramatic as that, as it currently is. And the federal role is to make sure that everybody is getting the best education that is realistically achieved, and it's certainly not being that commitment is not being honored in school districts all across that I'm familiar with in my area, quite frankly.